Well, good afternoon if you're in EST. Good morning if you're West. And I guess good evening if you're very far West. Thank you for joining our Breaking Free from Legacy Business Rules Technologies webinar. I'm Dan Griffith. I'm the CSO at Trizatech. I'm joined by Hugo, who will be doing the demo portion of our session. I'd like to do a couple of housekeeping things, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Number one is this is a 30-minute session. We've tried to keep it very time sensitive for those of you that are on your lunch break or those of you that are up early. And we will be monitoring the questions, which you can see here. So if you would be so kind as to submit your questions there, I will try to incorporate those in to our discussion. But if there's a question that we don't get answered, please either reach out to us or we'll reach back to you on your specific questions. We are doing just written questions today for time's sake. And this is a recorded session that you will have access to or that you can share with your colleagues afterwards. And this is part of what we call our Trizatech in Action 2021 series, where we are doing a live presentation just about every month or so. We do have one that's already recorded. Our intention is to record several others on a monthly basis for you. So we're going to talking today about breaking free from legacy business rules technology. And we're going to start with what I call 3 questions and then a bonus question. And we will then shift into a demo showing you what we do with business rules. So the first question I'd ask is, where are your business rules? That's maybe a question that you ask on a regular basis. But business rules, or what we would call decisions, are critical to many organizational activities. We focus on a couple of markets where it is key: underwriting and risk decisioning for things like financial services and insurance. We also focus in the healthcare market around clinical decisions and pathways. And certainly we have customers across a broad spectrum, but business rules run a lot of businesses. And they're often based on things like regulations, internal policies, desired business outcomes. And they reside in a variety of areas. I said legacy or proprietary operational systems, which if you've been around or your company has been around for any period of time, that would be true. They could be in a legacy business rule or workflow system, or they could be sticky notes. If you're, hopefully they're not just sticky notes, but if you're putting together a product, we have customers in the fintech and healthcare technology space that are really just putting together products. But the point is here that they reside in a lot of different areas, and many times those areas are difficult to access. The second question I'd ask is, are your business rules easy to change or create? In a word, probably not. And as you well know, modern organizations, whether they're small or large, must adapt quickly to ever-changing regulatory and business conditions. I would just simply point out over the last year, you talk about rapidly changing business conditions. It has accelerated a lot of business transformation, digital transformation in organizations. The third question is your business logic reusable? Again, the answer is probably not. Business logic, rules, and decisions are common across many parts of the business. If you think about a financial institution, there's several areas that would do risk decisioning, several that would do underwriting. If you're a healthcare facility, you would use clinical outcomes or pathways in a variety of areas. And the bonus question is this bad? And I think we would say, well, yes, it can be costly. I don't have to tell you, if you've got multiple business rules, business logic, workflow systems where the logic resides, it's costly to maintain those, it's costly to change those, and it's costly to update those. It's risky, meaning that if you can't deploy business rules or decisions quickly, you could have a lot of risk and liability. It stifles innovation. It makes it very difficult to change things. And finally, it increases time to market. If you're a smaller company, and you don't have a way to quickly and easily codify your business rules and decisions, it will hamper your time to market. So the real question is, what can I do about it? And we're glad you asked. And this is where I'm going to hand it over to Hugo. And he's going to present us with a demo.
Thanks, Dan. Hi, everyone. Nice to be here and nice to be presenting today. So, so we've talked a bit about business rule, and Dan mentioned business rule, how they work, flexibility, what are the costs and the risks. Here is a graphical depiction of a business logic, business decision logic here that we have. This is something that is fairly simple to understand. It's mostly a decision tree with your top decisions here and your sub decisions below, with your input data in yellow here. And the business knowledge models are the cut corners rectangle shapes. I'm going to get back to them in a few minutes. I'll just start with what we have here. The first thing I want to mention is this is a model that has been created by one of our partners. It's available for everyone to look at and review if you want to review these examples today. It's in TrialStack examples. So if you do a free trial, you'll see a place called TrialStack example where you can access this loan prequalification model. For those of you who are not familiar with DMN, I'll start with what is DMN. So DMN is the decision modeling notation from OMG. And basically, when you build decisions in DMN, you build them from the top decisions to the bottom. So top decisions here, sub decisions, and inputs, which are the smallest components, if I might say, of your decision model here. And BKMs, which I'm going to get back to in a minute. So let's look at what we have, and let's look at the top decisions that we have. This is the loan prequalification decision. And if I go into the logic behind it, what we have is a decision table, which is something that is fairly easy to understand for business users or for anyone working with business rules. We have our inputs, which are the results from the 3 sub-decisions, so the credit score rating, the back-end ratio, and the front-end ratio. And this will give us a pre-qualification for a borrower. So is my borrower pre-qualified for a loan or not? And we've even added some reasons in there. So for example, if I have a credit score rating that is poor or bad, I'm not going to be qualified because my credit score is going to be too low. Now, in this case, the only time we are qualified is when the credit score rating is fair, good, and excellent, that our back-end ratio is sufficient, and that our front-end ratio is also sufficient. Then we get qualified and our borrower has been successfully pre-qualified for the requested loan. So that's a top decision, that's a decision table. And if we look at the sub-decisions there, I'm not going to look at all 3 of them. And I seem to have issues with internet. But yeah,
Of course, you always do when we're doing that, right? I mean, this is just the nature of the beast, unfortunately.
Yeah, unfortunately it is. Yeah. So here I have my my credit score rating decision, which is basically a categorization of a credit score. So the credit score is a number, as I'm sure everyone here is aware. And based on this number, we're going to categorize it into a rating, which is excellent, good, fair, poor, or fair, or bad. Let's make the change here. That was my typo. So poor or bad here.
So I guess Hugo, you're making the point that it is pretty easy to change, right?
Yes, it is. So yeah, based on those numbers, we have all categories that we're going to determine here. Just a quick mention: over or equal to 750 here is excellent, and between 700 included. So we have a bracket here, and I don't know if that's clear for everyone, but on the left side we have a bracket, and on the right side we have a parenthesis. So It's included 700 to 750, excluded, it's good. And we've done the same for all the rest here. Now, decision modeling, DMN is very good for categorization. So that's one thing we can see from this decision here. And the other thing I want to have a look at is this decision here, back-end ratio, which is pretty much the same as front-end ratio, which is why I'm just going to look at this one here, which is based on those business knowledge models that I've mentioned earlier. Business knowledge models are things that allow you to reuse decision logic and to invoke this logic if you're not familiar with it. So for example, I'm not someone who works in finance, and I might not be aware of how to calculate the debt to ratio income. So here we have a subject matter expert who's defined the formula in there. So debt divided by income. And this is really the formula to calculate our debt to income ratio for a loan applicant. So you see small description of this BKM here. And in the other business knowledge model that we have, this is the lender acceptable DTI, so the lender acceptable debt to income ratio. And this really represents the policy for an acceptable debt to income ratio. So this is really the organizational policy. It's not regulation. It's what our organization defines as being acceptable for them. And it's been included in a separate BKM because it's easy to find, to change, and to reuse. So you will note that on those two business knowledge models, there are a lock. And I'm going to zoom back in for everyone to see. So there are locks on the top right corners here. This means those logics have been reused by reference. So they come from a library of elements I've imported, or drag and drop, basically. It comes from here. Those are the two business knowledge models I've reused. And this means that if in the future my organizational policy changes, I just have to go back to my library, change my lender acceptable DTI, which was 036, and it will be changed in all the models that are reusing it. Now, what does this mean for a decision here? This means that this decision will invoke our DTI business knowledge model. So we're going to map to what we had, to the parameters we had in this business knowledge model. The debt is the applicant monthly expenses plus the applicant monthly repayments, and the income is the applicant monthly income. Now, when is it satisfying? The back-end ratio is going to be sufficient if the client DTI is smaller or equal than our lender acceptable DTI, so the 0.36, and it's going to be sufficient, and else it's going to be insufficient. So this is a good example of how you can reuse business knowledge models and business knowledge logic from subject matter expert into your business rules and your decisions there. And then once you've built your models, once you're satisfied with those models, you can go ahead and test them, make sure the rules work the way you want them to work. For the sake of the time here, I've saved a couple of test cases. One where my debt to income ratio is too high, which I'm just going to load. But basically, we have our requested product, the applicant data, the easy and existing customer, and his monthly income, repayments, expenses, tax, and insurance, as well as his credit score rating here. Now I can run this decision, and I'm getting my output. So the credit score rating is fair. The back-end ratio is insufficient, and the front-end ratio is sufficient, which gives me a qualification that is not qualified. Debt to income ratio is too high. And if I go back to my decision table, just to see how the decision is taken, you can see that the criteria we use were highlighted. So basically, that's the rule that has been used to take this decision. So it's very transparent. And we know that the debt to income ratio is too high, which is why he's not qualified. Now, once you develop those business rules, those models there, they can be saved as test cases. This one was already saved. Those test cases can be rerun, so I can run them and verify that they're green, so they give me the result I expect. And if I make modifications to the model, I'm going to see my expected versus my actual results, which makes it very easy to validate if there's an error in the model, if there's an error in my logic, what changed, and where are those changes.
Hugo, we have a question from Jamie, and Jamie's asking, are BKMs limited to functions or can they be decision tables?
BKMs are can be decision tables, they can be context and trees, functions, basically most of the DMN logics that are available.
All right, thank you, Jamie, for your question. Please continue, Hugo.
Thank you. Once you've tested your model, once you've saved a couple of test cases, you've run them, everything works the way you expect it to work. An interesting aspect of this decision model, which, as I said, is easy to understand for everyone, is that it can be automated. So this is something that you can cloud publish for automation, and it's basically a one-click publish that we have here. And I'm going to show this quickly just so everyone is sees what we get. I'm not going to go into the more technical details, but if I look at my loan pre-qualification that I've just published, we have a description of our service, which was something I had in the details of my model. I have the thumbnail of the model here, and I have a try it form, a REST API, an open API. So if I look at the try it form, this is really a business-friendly way of testing your service. You have your service description, you have your input descriptions, and then you can enter the information. So everything you wanna enter in there. For example, here in the type, it's going to be a standard loan. My rate is for 0.04 for 30 years. Let's say 200,000, and I'm just gonna enter names. Someone who is employed, not an existing customer. 6,000 income monthly, 1,000 repayments, 500 expenses, 100 tax, 100 insurance, and a FICO score of 735, let's say. And then if I run this, I'm gonna get my results with the intermediate results, so the back-end ratio, the credit score rating, and the front-end ratio, and my loan pre-qualification result here. So this is something that can be obtained when you publish, and then you have the fully documented REST API, the open API, the ability to run the test cases that you've saved, promoting between different environments and the endpoints for your service. Any questions?
Yeah, it looks like we have a couple minutes left for questions. If you'll please enter those in the question box and we'll do it. Otherwise, I'll give it a minute. And if we don't see any questions, we'll close today's session and see you in a month. So any other questions? Oh, I think we've got one coming in here. Okay, so this is from Jamie. Jamie is asking, what is the difference between, quote, a decision and a BKM?
The BKM is going to be invoked by a decision. So you can define different logics in there, but your inputs are going to go into the decisions. The decision is going to invoke the BKMs, and the decision is going to give the output. The BKM is just defining the parameters of your decision, mostly.
And for maybe everybody knows, but can you tell us what BKM stands for?
Business knowledge models.
So I just wanted to make sure the audience knew that and that I knew it. So thank you for sharing that, Hugo.
Always.
We might have another question. Andres is asking, is there a way to share with the organization non-users? Is the first part of his question. And then he's asking, is that static, dynamic, or both?
We have a way to share the models with the rest of the organization. This is through Communicator. Let me show you. I'm going to open this in Communicator. It's a read-only mode, and it allows you to animate those models, see the overlays, report issues if you notice an issue in the logic that has been created. So, for example, if your lender acceptable DTI has been changed, but it's not been changed in your decision model, you can notify it. But basically, this is the model. We can view the details in there if you have a description or if you have notes. I think we have for the business knowledge models here. So all of that is accessible. And again, you can look at this and animate it and enter the information to take the decisions one by one.
Yeah, for the second part, I think what you were asking, Andres, is it static, dynamic, or both? So we can share in real time what we're doing there. So I guess you would say both. You can feel free to correct me on that.
Yeah, you can share your models in real time with other users as soon as you save them.
So Hugo, Doug has a question. He said, is it possible to use numeric values as key values, i.e. one instead of sufficient, et cetera, and to translate these into human readable output?
Yes, it's possible, yes. It would be very similar to what you've done here in credit score rating. You would have the output as being a numerical value, and then you would be categorizing it either in the same decision or in a second step to make it more visible for the business.
All right, thank you. Radhakonda is asking, what is chaining? So I'm not sure, maybe if you could share a little bit more on that, Radhakonda. I'm not quite sure what you're asking about chaining. I can guess that it's if you chain decisions, that may possibly be what's being asked there. Hold on, I think. Okay. Yeah, okay. So that is, I think what's being asked there is the result of one decision to another. So you take one decision and then you can chain on another decision that makes something on the output there. So I think maybe the question is, can you chain decisions to each other?
In DMN, yes, you can have top decisions that will use the outputs of the sub decisions. So you can have 2, 3, 4. If you want to keep adding top decisions over this one, if you want to keep adding decisions, you could. So that's something that is possible. If we're talking about different models, that would be something that is orchestrated through a workflow model.
Right. Yeah, and I think so. If you think about our customers, some of them are using it for some very complex decisions. We see it used a lot in the mortgage industry around things that are not only credit but other decisions that are hooked in. And then, of course, when we get into clinical pathways, we have a lot of things that could be rolling up into that. So I hope that answered that question. And Radhakonda says yes, that did. So. Good. I think we have time for maybe one more question before we go. And I'll give it another 15 or 20 seconds here for somebody to get it typed in. All right. Well, it looks like, doesn't look like anybody is typing there. Oh, yep, there is one more. What is the difference between the blue box and the white box? And you know what, I'll take it even further is, and the yellow box.
That's just colors that we've been adding. In the original models, the business knowledge models were blue. Those ones I reused and I didn't colored. But basically, we've colored the business knowledge models blue, and probably something I should have done here. Not the same blue, but yeah. We've colored the business knowledge models here and the inputs in yellow, and the decisions are white.
So I think the answer to that question is they can be whatever you want them to be. If you want to use a color scheme as you work through that. Okay, so there's I'm going to grab because I think we've got at least another minute. Hugo, does DMN follow a standard or is it a new standard from Trizatec? So
DMN,
go ahead.
DMN is a standard. It's the decision model notation. It's been created by the object management group, so it's vendor agnostic. It's not pushed by any specific vendors. It's really an international standard.
Yeah, and I'll take that one step further, Andres. We are a very standards-driven company and participate in a lot of different standards around, I'll call it broadly, business process and rules. But DMN is a standard. We also comply with a number of other standards, industry standards, including NISMO and some of the healthcare standards, particularly around fire. So I'm going to look and see. Okay, so I think we don't have any other questions. So this seems to be a good point to close. We thank you all for attending. Hope you will have a good afternoon, morning, evening. And until next time, we'll see you here on Trizatec in action. Thanks for your time. Thanks, Hugo.
Thanks. Have a lovely day, guys.